All right. Randy, Denha, and I are here talking to Bob Burg. I'm really excited. Bob, I appreciate, I know we were supposed to talk a couple hours ago, but technology got in our way. I'm really excited to have you. Randy and I started this last week and we had a blast, and we thought that you would be a great guest. Bob is the author of The Go-Giver. It's one of my favorite all-time books. I recommend it. I buy multiple copies, give it out all the time. And and I think it's a great time to talk about how to be a go-giver in the market that we're in today. I wanna let Randy speak for a second, but I just want to give everybody a quick synopsis of the book as we kind of jump in and we dive into what the book is about. The Go-Giver by Bob Burg and Jon David Mann is a business parable that contradicts the notion that to be successful, you need to be a go-getter. A competitive, hard charger focus on getting new clients and making even bigger deals. Instead, the authors contend you should make giving rather than getting your first priority in business and in life, and success will follow. Becoming a go-giver means giving value to others, not as a strategy or a quid pro quo, but as a way of leading a satisfying life. And this book had a huge impact on me. And I think people should always be thinking like this, but right now, in a market where people have to really be giving much more than they're necessarily getting from a quantitative, immediate impact, I just think this is so relevant. Randy, I just want you to kind of kick off, and then we'll get Bob talking.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Good afternoon to both of you. The concept of giving couldn't be more apropos, especially in today's, what I'll call COVID world. You have healthcare workers, you have frontline employees. I mean, all of our, essential employees are giving so much. But, as has been said, in giving, you're really receiving. No different than works of charity. When you give, you're getting so much more in return. And I think the same can be said for many of the principles that you talk about, Bob, in the everyday, business environment. There are givers, there are takers, and then there are, others that, that are more, nurturing, connectors, building bridges, and trying to, find their happy place. So, my hope today is really to, extend that olive branch to all the others that are out there looking for their way, and realizing that, it's not just taking, but also giving, where they'll get a lot more.
Yeah. So Bob, well said, Randy. So Bob, I know when you wrote the book, you didn't write it during a pandemic. You probably didn't have a pandemic in mind. And so kind of take us through a little bit about what the essence of the book is from your perspective, and what the essence of that means today.
Yeah, interesting. When Jon David Mann and I did write it, when it finally got published, it happened right at the beginning of the financial crisis in 2008. So we actually heard from a lot of people who, when the financial crisis happened, they sort of went into a reactionary mode in their business and tried to kind of give as little value as they could for the most money, like all their competitors were doing, and they found that really didn't work for them. And when they looked at ways regarding how they could bring more value to others, how they could add more value to conversations, toward actions, toward application, what have you, all of a sudden their businesses started to take off. One reason was because the others weren't doing that. And as you know, sometimes the contrarian is the one that wins because they're doing what does not seem intuitive, or what isn't intuitive, yet it's exactly what's needed. So yeah, I mean, I think right now what it is as we're still in the middle of this, it's finding ways to give value to others. And remember, value is defined as the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. So in other words, what is it about this thing, whether it's product, service, a philosophy, information, a listening ear, or what have you? What is it that does bring value to another person as they understand it to be of value? And so those people who are looking for ways to to do that are the ones who, whether they have a product or service they can sell right now, because some do, but some don't. Some are in a situation where their product or service is not something that their prospects get because it's necessary, but just because let's say they want it. And that's not something probably that's going to sell right now. So when you can find other ways to bring value to them, you are positioning yourself so that after this is over, you're going to be ready to hit the ground running, as opposed to others who've kind of pulled back, have been just so focused on themselves, and who are going to have to start at zero again once this gets over.
Yeah. So Bob, it really comes down to a question of utility, right? So utility being subjective to, that person that's delivering that good or service. So in their mind, they may feel they have a superior product or service, but take me through in terms of, the way you see things from this contrarian view, which is, really interesting. And it seems to work more in favor of the giver. But how do you get past that, sort of that metaphoric slick back hair salesman that's thinking they're delivering, this all and be all, and really doing so in such a way that doesn't, create the bridge, and it's only take as opposed to giving. How do you get past that?
Yeah. So when you think about it, it's actually very logical. John's and my philosophy, let's say the underlying premise, if you will, of the Go-Giver is that shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing this is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. But again, not for some woo-woo way out there reasons. It makes very logical sense. When you're that person who is able to take your focus off yourself and instead place it on others, making their life better, richer, more satisfying, more fulfilling, solving their problems, whatever it is that you do, people feel good about you. People want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be a part of your life, a part of your business. They want to introduce you and be your personal walking ambassador to others. When I speak at sales conferences, I will often begin by asking a question, and that is, how many of you agree with the following statement? Nobody is going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. And that's what we all do. We all laugh because we're all salespeople, right? And we know nobody's buying from us because we have a quota to meet.
Right.
They're not buying from you because you need the money, and they're not even buying from you because you're a really nice person. They're buying from you because they believe that they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so.
Yeah.
And in the basically free market in which we live, and when I say free market, I simply mean no one's forced to do business with anyone else. In that type of environment, that's the only reason why anyone should buy from you or from me or from anyone else. Now, here's the good news. That salesperson, that entrepreneur, what have you, who can place their focus on bringing immense value to that other person, that's the person who creates that context for success. That's the person who earns that person's knowing, liking, and trusting. That's the person who is much more likely to have that sale take place. So when Randy, you asked, that a great question, and you say, how do people move to that mindset? Well, it's understanding that it's in your best interest to place your interest on the other person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Bob. Go ahead. Finish.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I want to talk about that because I think I want to talk about the bridge to that. One of the in the book, the main character goes to a mentor and then is sent to a lot of other mentors, and that's kind of the path to enlightenment, right? I love that concept so much. I actually use that premise for my book, and mentorship is a big theme of yours. So talk about to the person who's having trouble transitioning the importance of mentorship.
Well, I mean, I'm a big believer in mentorship because I believe the right mentor can really cut your learning curve
Yeah.
tremendously.
How tremendously? How quickly do you think a mentor can cut?
Uh,
I'm a big believer in that too.
well, I mean, years, because what they're doing is they're sharing with you their wisdom, their experiences. Um, what's interesting though is I think when you see how people, and I think a lot of people understand how important mentorship is. I do see a lot of people, I think, approach potential mentors in a way that's more counterproductive than productive,
Yeah.
because they will ask that person who they may not have a relationship with or a significant relationship with, and whether they know this person in person in the community or online or what have you, they'll often just say, hey, will you be my mentor? And what happens is, first of all, if you want this person to be your mentor, the chances are a lot of other people probably want them to be, their mentor too. So they don't have a whole lot of time to invest in doing so. And when you just ask, will you be my mentor? That doesn't really establish any value on your part in terms of why they would think you're someone to work with. I'm not saying that can never happen, but probably doesn't. It comes across as entitled a little bit, and comes across so, what I suggest is just to kind of approach it a different way. And I believe you can approach pretty much anyone, but the way you might do it is to say, I know you are extremely busy, and if this is not something either that's appropriate or even something you would want to do, I absolutely understand that. I'm wondering if I may ask you one or two very specific questions.
Mm.
Now, when you frame it that way, what you've done is, first, you've respected the process and that person. You haven't come across as though they owe you the benefits of their, of their wisdom, okay, of their years of experience. You're also giving them an out or a back door, which is always very appreciated. You've let them know right up front if something you either is not appropriate, or you don't have time, or you just for any reason don't want to do. Totally understandable.
Sure.
And then what you did, which is very important, is rather than just saying, I want to pick your brain, or I want to, you've said, may I ask you one or two very specific questions? What this is communicating is that you have an agenda. And when I say agenda, in this case, I mean that in a positive way, not a hidden agenda, but I mean, you have an agenda. You are not going to waste their time.
Right.
You know what you're going to ask. And most people who are successful, again, not everyone's going to do it, but not everyone has to. People pursue their happiness their own way. Some people want nothing to do with mentoring anyone, but most people will say, sure, feel free to ask, what can I answer for you? Now, these questions, you want to make sure you're not asking something that you easily could have discovered on your own through their website or through articles on them or through social media or what have you. But you ask these couple of questions, again, whether it's in person, on the phone, through what have you. You thank that you don't take up any more time than you have to. You thank them profusely. That very day, you write a personalized, handwritten note of thanks, not very long. Just, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to answer my questions. It was just nuggets of gold. I look forward to applying your wisdom right away, and we'll keep in touch and let you know how. Boom. Best regards on your name. I would also suggest as an extra touch that you make a small donation. Doesn't have to be anything big, just a small donation to their favorite charitable cause, which again, you can easily find out by looking online, finding an article or what have you. And you make it out in their name because it will get to them. They'll be notified. Now, you're not doing it to kiss up. You're doing it just to communicate again that you respect the process. You don't take it for granted. You appreciate them. Now, A few weeks later, maybe you follow up, let them know how you're doing. Maybe you ask one more question, and then you continue the process. Now, eventually, it may turn into a mentor-protege relationship, ongoing. It may, and it may not. It's important not to be attached to the outcome. You can prefer or desire something, but don't be attached to the outcome. It might be that that person answered a couple of questions of yours, and that's going to be it. Someone else comes along here and someone else there, or it might be, what have you. It might be Tuesday with Maurice, who knows? With a Maury, who knows? And you have an ongoing mentor. But that's how you do it in such a way that you're able to really attract someone like that into your life.
So I have a question, Bob, a corollary to that. What about our young viewers, people that are early on in their career? How can they, get into the mindset of approaching that person and saying, I want to give, I want to provide to this person, but getting past the psychology of saying, I don't have anything to offer this person, because I think there is something that each one of us can offer the other. But how do we really employ these techniques for our young workforce people that are really wanting to come up? How do we help them?
Yeah, well, the young people can. This is exactly how I would suggest they do approach that person, doing it that way. But we also want to find ways to bring value to that person however we can. Now, if you're in the same town as that person, you can offer to pick up their laundry for all that, just to hang around with them. Absolutely. And I've seen people do that and offer to drive them around. But you also, whenever you can connect them with someone who may be someone they want to meet, there's no saying you can't do that. You have things, you may have connections with the local Little League that they don't have, that they may, who knows, you just don't know. Or you also may know that they're a collector of old books on Roman wars or something like that, and get that as a gift for them and send it to them. Okay, so there's all sorts of ways. Now, you can't provide the kind of value to them that they're providing to you, but you don't have to provide that same value. It's really just their understanding how much you respect them, appreciate them, and that you're coming from a place of abundance where you want to be able to express your gratitude.
So the key is not to make it look like a transaction. Pure authenticity and likability and true, really not taking it for granted, like you said, but it can't look like a manufactured transaction or deal.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And what I like about what you're talking about also is there's a responsibility on the mentee to, know that they need to bring something to the table too. It's not just call, get, and then there's pre-work and then there's post stuff to do. Let me ask you a question. One of the things that the book talks about is fulfillment. One of my favorite quotes is "Success minus fulfillment equals failure" by Anthony Robbins. And in the book, the character finds fulfillment. But talk to the people out there that are kind of in between, like where they are and trying to find fulfillment. How do they go about it in today's world?
Well, I mean, let's look at the concept of happiness, okay? And it's always important to define terms because people define terms in different ways that, may be different from someone else. So it's always best to check the premise and make sure we're all headed in the right direction. As Pindar said to Joe, we want to be facing the same direction. So happiness is not necessarily an instantaneous high. It's not necessarily pleasure, though it certainly can be. I mean, eating a pizza or a chocolate coconut donut, that would give me great pleasure. It wouldn't necessarily make me happy. Now, instantaneously, again, pleasure, but that's different from happiness. Now, we could say that one of the dictionary definitions of happiness is simply a mental feeling of well-being. And that's, to me, a very legitimate definition. I take it a little bit deeper when we're talking about happiness. And I would define happiness as a genuine and ongoing feeling of joy and peace of mind, the result of living congruently with one's values. Okay, very difficult to be happy, have that genuine, ongoing sense of joy and peace of mind if we're not living congruently with our values, for obvious reasons. We're not, right? And so so if we're looking at, as you mentioned, having someone, get to that point and figure out, what they want to do and do that well, what brings you happiness? What is congruent with your values? What do you enjoy? What, lights your fire? What, now there's also a saying, that has gone on for forever, which is kind of a good intended saying, but it's only, I think, partly right. And that is people, will say, well, just follow your passion and, do what you love, do what you're passionate about, and the money will follow. I get what they're saying, and it's half right. It's partly right. Do what you love. I mean, I absolutely, and there's been a movement lately saying, no, don't do what you love. Forget about passion. Just do the work and you'll get passionate. I get it. I respect that opinion. I don't totally agree with that. I think most of the most financially successful people in the world, and those who have the most peace of mind, will tell you it's really difficult to work that hard when you're not passionate about what you're doing. It's simply, but I would say this, it's great to, and I suggest, absolutely keying in on your passion, but you've also got to be able to do so in a way that there's a marketplace for it who's willing to pay you for the manifestation of your passion. Okay. Otherwise you've got a hobby, right? So by all means, what you're passionate about, what, again, what rocks your boat, what lights your fire, by all means, if you can find some way to make a business out of that, but you've got to either create a market. Difficult to do, but you can do that. But mainly it's identifying the market that already exists. What problem can you solve? Or what joy or what have you can you provide through this, depending upon what your product or service is.
Yeah.
So I think that's really what it is. So when you can be congruent with your values and do something that every day, brings you joy just by the very nature of doing it, that you would do for free, other than there's no reason to do that. You should be doing what you love and receiving a very, very healthy income for it as a result of supplying so much value. That's why John David Mann and I say that money is simply an echo of value, right? It's the thunder to value's lightning. The focus can't be on the money. The focus must be, because remember, they're not buying for your sake. They're buying for theirs. So the focus must be on the value you're providing another human being. And the money you receive for that is simply a natural result of that value.
That's right.
Well put.
That's good. Randy, you have a question?
No, just taking it all in. Taking it all in.
I know it was like a master's class today on being a go-giver. I do have one more question, Bob. I'm seeing a lot of companies right now. Now we're working remotely. COVID is going on right now. You're talking about living your values. And right now, companies are forced to not just have their values on their wall, but really they must be living their values. And the people within the companies are feeling a deeper connection to companies who are really living their values and going above and beyond, and really feeling the companies whose values are on the wall, but they're not walking the talk. And so to the company listening right now who has it on the wall but doesn't know how to work in this remote world, what are you suggesting to them as far as waking up?
Well, this is truly where the rubber meets the road, and it's something that Bob Chapman, the great leader of Barry Waymiller, who wrote the wonderful book Everybody Matters, it's something they had to really come through with back during the downturn in 2008, the financial crisis, because everything the company had been built on was that sense of teamwork, togetherness, family, but then you look back at Enron, who had a great set of core values that were posted on the third, right, which of course was totally incongruent with how they actually were.
Right.
But Barry Waymiller, the company, which had built a humongous business based on those values, then when the financial crisis came, people did look at them and say, okay, what are they going to do now? And they just handled it beautifully. And the sacrifices that were made across the board. They found ways to make sure that no one got laid off. They decreased hours for everyone, and they took, the people at the top took massive pay cuts.
Right.
They did stop putting money into the retirement accounts for the workers, the employees. But then once it was over, they actually replenished them, and they were one of the few companies that did that. And there were many examples of what they did to show exactly how much they did treasure their team members, which is what they, one of the things they talk about. If you ever get the chance to read the book Everybody Matters by Bob Chapman and Raj Sisodia, just an amazing, wonderful book.
Good. And it seems like everybody's somewhat doing that today in light of COVID. I hear, and for example, I had a meeting earlier today where I have an executive at Lear Corporation who said that they've all taken pay cuts because they want to contribute to the wellness of everybody and not lay anybody off. That's just one example, but you're reading more and more of these companies because 2008 was not that long ago. No. And I think, normally people have select amnesia, but I think it's such a short, compressed period of time they remember it quite well.
Mm-hmm. Great point, Randy.
Yeah, it's great. Well, Bob, I can't thank you enough. I know you just gave a book recommendation, but before we close out, you have an amazing bookshelf behind you. On top of the book that you just recommended, what's your favorite book?
Oh, gosh. There's so many that I, would recommend. And I guess it depends on the reason someone would be reading it, because there are, different topics. One really great one was written by a woman by the name of Annie Duke. She was a world champion poker player. You may have seen her on the different TV shows, the tournaments out of Vegas. And it was about making, I had her on my podcast, and I'm doing something I usually don't do right here because I'm not good at it. I'm multitasking, and the reason why is not to be impolite, but because I am not remembering the name of her book, and it's such a wonderful, wonderful book, and I want to make sure that I'm able to shout that out. It is called Thinking in Bets. Thinking in Bets, and it's basically how to make the best decisions when you don't have all the facts. And it's absolutely one of the best books I have ever read, and it has truly helped my decision-making process.
Oh, wow.
So I read that book, Thinking in Bets by Annie.
That's great.
Yeah. I'm gonna get both of them today. Well, I'm going to say something and then I'll let Randy close out. But Bob, I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking time to share your thoughts on the book. I appreciate just the book and you as a human being. Thank you for taking time to be on our show. You're gracious with your time. We were supposed to be on 4 hours ago, and then technology didn't let us, so we rescheduled for right now. So very grateful for you. Thank you so much. And your words will have an echo similar to how you talked about money to many of the people who listen, as they have echoed with me. So Randy, I'll let you kind of close out. And then Bob.
Thank you, Jonathan. And Bob, thank you for your time. You're a wealth of knowledge. Normally Jonathan and I are speaking most of the time, but I think if it wasn't so rude, I'd be taking notes. So thank you for allowing us to be students. We really appreciate you, and hopefully we can do this again. It was a lot of fun, and I certainly learned a lot. So thank you.
I appreciate you both very much.
Yeah. Anything in closing, Bob?
No, I just wish everyone well, continue to stay safe, understand the issues and yet live in the solution, and think about the choices that you do have, those things that are within your control, and then focus on those.
Good. All right. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, everybody. Randy, thanks, man.
Thank you.
Bob. Talk to everybody.
Bye-bye.